Give me a second. I'm logging onto a couple of things. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I've got the recording already going. Okay, let me get attendance. And I see we've got a few people in here. Okay, I've got 5 of you marked down as here. And just as a reminder, make sure you do participate in the chat session to get your grade from in here for the discussion for the week. So do pop some things in there occasionally. And some more things than just hello that all of y'all just did. So ask some questions throughout the session or throw a comment in. All right. We are down to 1 month to the end of class. And at this point that you've got Tuesday, a month from now and 4 weeks will be the end of the final exam. Your lab final in here, I'm not sure if I've got it out there yet for you or not. I don't think I do. I think I got to get that put out there, which I'll get out there in the next day or two, or try to. I thought I was going to get some other things done today that I haven't done yet so far. Yeah, it's hidden right now. I got to double check to make sure that's the correct lab final and the OVA file that you'll need for it. Because if that actually I think is the one from last year, so I've got to double check that and get the correct one on it. So I'll get that out soon on it so that y'all can go ahead and work on it. And remember, it is a mandatory item to do the lab final. Because to be able to pass the class that you have to have done it. Now, I didn't say pass it, you just have to have done it. So that will be there at that point for you. This week you're on 21 and 22, I believe it is, that you're working on is the modules, and which puts y'all really close on the packet tracer. The PowerPoint slides are being out there, as it is 21 and 22 this week, and I think I'm working on number 23 on PowerPoints. No, 23 is done, so I must be working on 24. 24 is just about finished, I believe. Maybe finished. I think it's almost finished, and then I'll get on the next ones. So we are coming down to the end at this point. So this week you do have an assignment on 22 to do, and that you've got on that. So as we get down to the finish, remember, and I'll try to go ahead and activate the course feedback now. Also, when I go out and look at double check on the lab final, you do have to do the course feedback at Cisco, and you're going to receive the course evaluations for the school somewhere within the next few days, within this week or so. They're going to release those, and you'll get a link in the email. That's not the one at Cisco. I want you to do the course evaluations for the college, but the one that you are required to do is at Cisco, because I don't think they've released those yet, but they may have, because they just sent me a note the other day about that I could add 4 questions on it. So that's why I'm thinking they're not been released yet, but I could be wrong. And I didn't change from what I had on there from before. So I should still have the extra little questions I had. I do look at those. I do sometimes make some changes based on the feedback from those. If there are problems with the class, I strongly encourage you to let me know during the class, because I can make changes as necessary during a class if something just isn't right out there. But the course feedback at Cisco is a mandatory item that Cisco requires you to do to be able to pass the class. Also, you have to do the final exam, and you have to do the lab final. So those 3 items are mandatory required by Cisco. The other one is, which they don't have a requirement on, but I've got a requirement on because I can't get it otherwise for you, is that you have to turn the permission form in to me to be able to pass the class also, because I can't put your grades out there on your labs without that permission form. That well, there's always little things that could be changed, and sometimes, and then where I have to upgrade these classes, sometimes things get overlooked or I don't really realize, like the test timings that I've changed them during the semester because some people commented in one of the Cisco classes about the tests have gotten longer, and I didn't really realize that on it, and y'all were getting an awful short period of time to do the testing. So do be aware on that. Now, as we're getting into these 2 chapters, so I'm not looking, and that I'm looking for new ways, not just ways to teach, but also material to teach. And as a matter of fact, the reason I was late getting on today is in the Cisco class this morning, we were talking about ICMP and ping, and the issue came up about how do you ping an IPv6, which you can do just a regular ping command, but it does it to IPv4. And so I was out there looking, trying to find how to do it with IPv6. I did find if you're using the IPv6 address, the number address, in Windows, you got to do a ping-6. But now I'm trying to find how to do, when you do the ping on a domain name, for it to return and use the IPv6 address for that name. And I haven't quite figured that one out yet. And I was in there digging on that. And I've got to be doing some grading too. Now, as far as the grading is concerned, prior to last week, I was completely caught up on grading in all classes. The only things that at the moment that I should be behind on is if any late activities were turned in during last week in classes, that's not been done. Things that are due today, I normally do not grade until after the day they're due. Sometimes I do work a little ahead, particularly if everybody's turned something in, but not very often. So I wouldn't count myself as even being due to start grading on stuff due today until after midnight tonight, because normally I would not grade it until after that point. Grade transfers, I've got to do that still and go out there and transfer in both Cisco classes on that. So this class and the 2451 class. But I did that some a week ago, so that's fairly close up on grades being transferred. However, there are some people, and I have sent emails a couple of times to them, that have not turned in their permission form yet. And that's where I was really guiding towards, is that's mandatory, because I can't put your lab grades out at Cisco until you do that. And like when you do the final lab, you're going to turn it in Blackboard, and I can't put that grade in Cisco until I have that form. And guess what? That means Cisco sees you haven't done that lab, so I don't, I can't pass you on the class then. So the permission form is a required item too. And if you took other classes with me of Cisco where you did the form, then you don't need to do it. But if I have not credited you with it, if you didn't tell me that you have taken a previous class with me, I may not have credited. Y'all can tell real quickly if I have a form on file, or like Kelly was just saying, you previously took the class and turned in a form then. Y'all can tell real quick if I've gotten your form for this semester or known to go look for the form from a previous semester by just looking in the grade book. At the top of the grades, it will show a grade that it shows a permission form there. That does not count in your grade actually, but I've got it in the grade book, and if you've got 100 in permission form, I've got your permission form. If you don't have 100 there, then I have not received your permission form, or you have not let me know that you were in a previous class for me to mark it there. Now, out at Cisco, if you're seeing your lab grades in the Cisco grade book, then you're definitely okay, because that's what I can't transfer. I can't transfer stuff from Blackboard to Netacad. However, I can transfer your test grades from Netacad to Blackboard without that form, because that's not a legal issue. So, like I say, the best thing to do is just go look in my grades there in Blackboard, and at the top of the list, permission form is one of the first things on that list, and if you see 100 right there, you're in good shape. If you don't see a grade for that one, you need to get with me. And if you don't see a grade there, you've gotten an email from me a couple of times over the last few weeks saying you need to turn a permission form in. So, and there's a few people there still sitting in that, and it was in the Module 1 assignment is where the permission form's actually located. And I have to have an original. I can't have a copy of it's got to be an original signature on it. That can't be a copy. Your signature can't be a copy on it. So you can't email it to me or whatever. You've got to send the original form to me, which you can either mail to me, which I'll give you an address, or you can bring it by one of the campuses and tell them it needs sent to me up here. I think I'm having a problem with Floyd right at the moment on not having forwarded one to me, so which I'm investigating. And you need to do the Google Cloud 2 courses also, because that is one lab for you. I will comment this on those quick labs. The instructions are not always the best. You have to read between the lines sometimes, and sometimes there's things in there that are now in the Google Cloud that the commands have changed slightly, or they've added another box you have to answer before you get to the one that they're talking about. I have seen that in there because I've done the first one of the two I told y'all to do, and I've done most of the second one, and I will get it finished hopefully in a week or so. I was hoping that I might get to work on it some last week, but I sort of got slowed down. I got my second COVID shot, and the day I got it was fine, other than my arm was sore. The next day I got hit by a fever on it, which dragged me down some, although it didn't stop me, but it definitely dragged me down where I didn't get to do things I wanted to do as part of vacation last week, and I just didn't feel like doing much. Then Thursday, because of that pulling me down so much on Wednesday, I was tired Thursday, and I spent a lot of the day resting. Flu shot never has bothered me, and the first COVID shot didn't bother me, other than soreness in the arm. But this one did get me for a day, and I know some people that have been hit harder. I had a friend yesterday that got the first one, and she got a metallic taste, which actually was familiar to me when she told me on it. That I went, wait a minute, because she was going, it was like a copper taste in her mouth, and I went, wait a minute. I had something I caught in China back in 2005 that put everything, the air in one town smelled like orange metallic. That was my description of it. And when I said that, she said, that's the same smell, taste. And I had that taste and smell in me for a while, solid over there until after I got back. And when I woke up the first few times over here, I'd smell it. And then, and I got bad respiratory sick over there, went to the doctor, hospital, didn't stay there, but you had to go to the hospital to see the doctor. And then I got pneumonia a few times for the next couple of years here, and I smelled it a few times when I'd get sicker and stuff, and I keep notice something, and then the last time I actually smelled it when they beat on my chest, and then I haven't had a problem since with it, so I think they got whatever it was out of there. But so who knows? But as far as how long all of that stuff happens, who knows at this point? Because they don't know, because where they're saying long-term effects may be really, really long-term. Nobody knows, because we've only known about this disease for a year now. So long-term is just that year. So that was my break for me, a lot of it. So I was hoping to get away a little bit more. I did answer some emails from people a few times during the week anyway, but that's where we are. Now, chapter 22. Sorry to hear on that, Nicholas, that it hit you that much, but I hope you're better on that too. A friend of mine that had the problem yesterday after she drank some Powerade, that all of a sudden, and where I've drank Powerade when I've gotten sick several times before, and all of a sudden, 30 minutes or so later, I felt a whole lot better. She said she felt a whole lot better and felt well at that point then on it. And went and ate a good sized steak. So and that she said somebody else told her to get some Powerade, which I had, and I told her to drink it. So you might want to keep that one in mind, because I found Powerade is exceedingly useful. If you're doing with the IP address, that works, Kelly. So if you want to ping an IPv6 IP address, you would do ping-6. I did learn that. However, if you're wanting to where we can ping a domain name. It returns an IPv4 address. I want it to return an IPv6 address, and I haven't found out how to do that yet, other than if you go in and change your settings to say preferentially use IPv6 somewhere in your address settings on your machine. And then it wants to return IPv6 all the time, is what people point out. So that's not what I'm looking for either. I want to be able to ping www.whitewatt.com and have it return and use the IPv6 address associated with my web page, not the IPv4. If we do ping and the www.whitewatt.com, it'll return the IPv4 address and then ping that address. But what I want to do is return the 6 address and then actually send the echo request off to, and actually it wouldn't be echo request because it's IPv6, so it would be actually RA's, I can't remember what the RA stands for. The A is the advertisement, no, because that's for other, yeah, but for it to send off the request to it. So that's what I'm trying to find. All right, in chapter 21, because you're doing 21 and 22 this week. 21 probably will have some interest to y'all. For a number of you, is that it's getting into cryptographics. It's using hashing. That what we're doing is making sure that our data is confidential and in the integrity of it, that it's not been altered. So to guarantee the integrity, we're going to use a hash algorithm. SHA 2 and 3 are big ones. MD5 is still widely in use, but it is strongly discouraged from being used. Although I kept Cisco using it, because actually when you do your show runs and the Cisco devices, if it shows a 5 on where you've got something encrypted, it's used MD5 on it, and that you'll find that quite often on it. So they're going through and they're talking about the hash operations, and what the hash operation does is it takes whatever it is that you're wanting to get a hash function on. It goes through and it hashes it, and it converts it all into through a mathematical formula. It converts it into a number that is hard to reverse about it. So they use an example of grinding coffee, that they've dumped it into the grinder. It hashes that all together and comes out with this fixed hash value, which will be a long value of actually hexadecimal digits. Now, that hasn't encrypted your data or anything. You just got a hash value with it. Here's what the part it does for you is that you send the document or whatever it is along with its hash value. The receiver does the calculation also, the hash function on it, and calculates a value. If the value that they calculate matches the value you included, then they know that it has not been fooled with, that it is authentic there, and that the integrity is good. Now, the other part is you can't take that hash value and figure out what in the world the document was. And you could do it on an encrypted document, or you could do it on a non-encrypted document. It's just a way of making sure that what you've received has not been changed from what was sent. So they walk you through and talk about that one. And they're using as their examples where you've got plain text messages. But like I say, it could be on an encrypted one also. So they do that. And then they talk about MD5 and its encryption versus SHA and the process with it. MD5 uses a 128-bit digest, so that means it creates a 128-bit hashed message. It's a legacy one and it's not very good. So there's ways to fool around with that, because what your object would be is to change the document being sent, and that you got to change the hash value also to match now with it, so that the changes don't affect on it. SHA-1 is a National Security Agency developed one. It uses a 160-bit hashed message. Takes longer than MD5, but it's there. It's got flaws to it too, so you don't see 1 mentioned anymore. 2 was further developed by them, by the NSA. Uses a 224-bit or 256 or 384 or 512-bit hash. If you use it, then they say to use 256 or bigger. SHA-3 was introduced by NIST, which actually sets the standards for security out there, cybersecurity now out there in the US. So that's an important one. So it moved over to them from NSA, and it now uses 224, 256, 384, 512, and it uses much more complex algorithms, and so it's considered fairly secure today. And that's really where you probably want to be using is SHA-3. So they go through and teach you on all of that and lead you through on that. Then they go through and teach you about encryption, and that where there's looking at confidentiality, and teach you about how to do cryptography. And so that goes through and shows you how to encrypt, and they show you the asymmetric and symmetric encryption. With symmetric, both the one receiving it and using it, they both use the same key. It's a pre-shared key. The same key is used by both of them. Asymmetric says that you have a public key and a private key, and you will encrypt it with the private key, and you share the public key, and the person that has a public key can then do their encryption of it. But they don't have the private key, so that helps make it much more secure on that. So they discuss those to you, and they also mention the Diffie-Hellman to you in here with a little bit on that. That's another algorithm to produce those secret keys, and it's a way to produce the keys between them without having an agreement, without having shared before. So Diffie-Hellman's just another way of generating those keys. And I'm hearing things pop up over here, so let me see what I've got. Your VM is at 100% disk space. If you extended the disk, you made the disk bigger, the originally. But the VM, if you expand the size of the disk in the virtual box settings, then the virtual machine will see the extra space on there. However, if you created another drive sitting there, you'll have to first format that drive. But if you just extend it on it, it should see the additional space in that drive. So you're showing the, when you go and look at your settings from within the VM, you're showing the drive full, Nicholas? Um, Send me in an email a print screen of what you're seeing in the virtual machine settings with the size on it and stuff, of exactly what it's showing there on it. You may have to do something in Windows to now, because it's bigger than what you had the partition as, so you're going to have to expand that partition in there. It depends on what type of drive it is, but you'll have to go into your drive settings in Windows, and it may let you expand to that addition of the fact the drive's now bigger to show the partition's bigger, or you may have to see on it. Now, since it's in Ubuntu, I'm not sure right off where you got to go in there to be able to change the size of the drive, but you're going to have to go into disk settings somewhere in Ubuntu, and I can't tell you that right off the top of my head at all, to change the size of the drive. Send me an email about that, Nicholas, so that, oh no, I have to go out and look. Because I know I've got something to do right after I leave school here. I'm going to go help backpack blessings, and then I'm supposed to go ride my bicycle. I got to get my bicycle back from the bicycle shop first, and then I'm supposed to ride with those people in the park tonight for a while, and then head home. So send me an email on it, and then I'll look at it and try to get back with you tonight on it. So do be aware on Diffie-Hellman and how it does on that, and where they exchange information back and forth about what their colors are, and then that they can generate, and that they can generate the stuff off of it. And they use this color bit on it, and that the Diffie-Hellman's a way to do the cryptography, which for a lot of y'all that you'll find that interesting. And then they have you play a little bit of Wireshark 2, and I think I may have given you that assignment. I'm not sure. And then they talk about public key, private key, which I already mentioned to you. And so just be aware of those and how that's done, because you will use lots of private key, public key out there on stuff, a lot of public key. Chapter 22, Module 22, gets into endpoint protection. I think you may find this one a little bit easier than some of them. So they talk about your anti-malware protection, and that's going to get into your antiviruses and other type stuff here, your spam messages and how to protect on that and stuff on it. So this is useful to you. On the antivirus, anti-malware type stuff, they talk about the signature-based, which is what we started originally with way back in the 80s. And the big problem with signature-based is the only things it will catch is anything that has the same signature as what's in the program. They're still using that as a back behind it, but now they're also using the heuristics and the behavioral-based. The heuristic looks at stuff and has just down types of things, general features that various types of malware use, and watches for those. And so when they come out with new types of malware or modified types of malware, it's recognizing those general features and goes, whoa, this probably is malware here. Behavior-based goes on the basis of watches for suspicious behavior out there. And actually a big place that's being used is where they're now coming up with anti-ransomware, anti-malware. Is that it watches for behavior. That if it starts seeing stuff being encrypted on your machine, it stops it because that's suspicious when it's a number of files starting to be. It doesn't totally protect you. They do a little bit of discussion on firewalls and stuff on it, and like your Windows firewall and some others. And then about the other type things on that. So that's things to be aware of. Be aware also some of your antivirus programs now are dropping some of your older operating systems from covering on them, and so people are running into that. Trend Micro, just beginning of this year, dropped support for Vista and XP, I believe. I know they dropped Vista because I had somebody the other day that had that problem, and that they're still using a machine. They pretty much just use it for email, so they really don't need a newer one. And they were going, what do we do? And when I checked, Trend Micro no longer supports Vista. And I think that Trend Micro is really wanting to drop out on Windows 7 also. And so Avast actually does still support Vista, and I think it supports XP back too. So I got them to start using Avast. So they talk about a number of different ways you can protect on that. Keep in mind that there's a lot of this stuff is larger type places, and that with homes or whatever, you're not going to have the fancier type things. Next generation firewall, I actually talked about that in the other class today, briefly mentioned that that's a good way to be able to block denial of service attacks, but still be able to allow people to ping your devices. So that's out there. They talk about your host firewalls, which are the firewalls that are actually on your machines, and that you can have them. They mention about for your Android phones and tablets also have firewalls available. Although I don't think on my phone that I don't think I'll have a firewall on it. I do know I've got Avast running on my phone to protect against malware there on it. Windows Defender Firewall is Windows Firewall. They keep changing the name of it, throw Defender in there. Sometimes they don't have it in there, and I think currently the name is to Windows Defender Firewall. They talk about Linux uses their IP tables to set up rules. So basically you're setting up a firewall, but you're setting it up through IP tables. And now I'm using NF tables, where you're setting up your rules on your forwarding, etc. on it, instead of just on IP numbers that you're setting up some other type stuff with it. So you're still developing your firewalls. And Cisco, if you took Cisco 1 or beyond, that when you looked at access control lists, you're actually building a firewall with ACLs. And then they talk a little bit about host intrusion systems to be able to find when somebody tries to break into your system, and where you're keeping different types of information on that, of alerts and logs that go to the security team, and that you can then pick up all of that. So that they throw you those. And then they mention about your host intrusion detection systems, or HIDS, and that where it's using signatures to watch for certain malware and other stuff to catch on it. However, the big threat on it is that it's only good against known threats, and assuming you keep your signatures up date. It does not protect against new or 0-day. And remember, a 0-day attack is where they have found a hole in the operating system and nobody knows about it yet. And they make an attack through that hole that nobody knows exists yet. So that's a 0-day attack because it's an attack done on day 0 about that hole before anybody knows about the hole. The reason for making your security updates to your operating system. And then they talk about some on appliance security, and setting up appliances that will protect your stuff. You can get physical firewalls to use that will work as appliances and other ones. The other part is to be aware of your attack surface. The network attack surface is where all the places on your network there's vulnerabilities. Your software attack surface, your software's got surface that it can be attacked all over the place. And then there's human attack surface. Because remember, your attackers can attack your people that work for you or use your equipment, that not literally beat them up or anything, but they use them as their way to get in, that it may be through social engineering or user error or whatever. And so your whole object is to be able to block out. And our attack surface is growing rapidly. As IoT grows tremendously and the cloud grows tremendously, all of that stuff is areas that can be attacked now. Bring your own device is also. It used to be the only devices on a network were the devices that were owned and operated by the organization. Well, that means there's a lot more stuff can happen. They mention about applications can be whitelisted and blacklisted. Are we going to allow certain applications through our network? We'd whitelist it. If we're going to block them, we're blacklisting them. So whitelisting just says they're approved. Blacklisting says prevent. And that's the terms at this point, though there's some things out there and people advocating to change those terms from blacklist and whitelist. So just be aware those names of those terms may change over time. I have seen since last summer several things of several companies saying that you have to use some new name, that there's the approved list of applications and the unapproved list of apps, instead of whitelist and blacklist. So just be aware of that one. Whether it'll change or not, we'll see. Just like they're saying on their hard drives, and when I use hard drives, that includes SSD, which is really not got a actual drive in it. That you've got master and slave drives. They're wanting to change the names of those too. So just be aware on that names could be changed, and if you see something unusual, read it carefully, and usually you can figure out what they're talking about in relation to what we've already known about. And then they talk about endpoint, and then that's all of it. So we've just covered through the 2 chapters and a brief summary across the board. All right, questions for me on those, because we've actually run pretty good time on this. Okay, I got a whole bunch of no's on that. So they do have some videos for y'all also through the lesson today, showing some different things. So there's a good bit of stuff in there, but a lot of what there's the hashing y'all probably haven't dealt with really before. You've seen or heard something briefly on it probably, but may not have really understood on it. So hopefully hashing makes a little more sense to you, and particularly in terms of the SHA and the MDA on that for hashing, and then that and where you get into the Diffie-Hellman a little bit related to that. The encryption, usually most people have a little bit of an idea at least on it, and that one usually gets interesting on you. And then just about how the firewalls all come into play should be fairly good too for you all. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.